RJ,
Yes.
that was all very bizarre, but sorry about that.
That's okay. Nice to meet you, Michelle.
Really nice to meet you. Thank you so much for doing this.
Yeah, it's my pleasure. My pleasure. Yeah, I don't do too many interviews anymore, but I don't know, something about you struck me, so I said, okay, I'll do it.
Well, I feel like in a way I've almost been waiting for this since I read Supercharged Self-Healing last year.
Hmm. You enjoy
Um
that?
yeah, I mean it came at a I had already been really super chronically ill for about 10 years, and
Mm.
I was still in pretty bad shape when I read it, but some a friend recommended it, and I was like, all right, yeah, sure, But when you're in that situation, you're like, sure, another book.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I read it, and it was just, it was really just one line that stood out when you were like, the reason why mystics fast and meditate is because it works. And I thought, well, that's simple. It's that's clear. And so
Yeah.
I embarked on a 61-day juice fast,
Mm.
which really just absolutely kind of changed my entire physiology.
I bet. I bet. Yeah.
Yeah, it was pretty massive. So it was when I started this, I thought I need to talk to him, and it's just all of your other philosophies too. But that was just what was personal for me.
Oh, I'm glad. Well, I'm glad that takes a lot of determination and will to do that. But I mean, nothing happens without determination and will. So I would say you were utilizing it properly for sure. Congratulations on doing that because that does take a lot.
Thank you. Yeah, it was especially standing up at the juicer and like actually taking these pounds and pounds and pounds of vegetables and cutting them up and like kind of falling over. It was about a week or two until I started to get the nutrition and the sort of strength from the enzymes. First, couple of weeks were definitely a challenge, but after that, it was like when you start to see results, you're like, okay, yeah, sure, who needs food?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's absolutely true. I mean, that statement about why do mystics and masters always talk about meditation and fasting because they work. It's one of the fasting fasting in all its forms, right? So when we say fasting, of course, the first thing we think of is food, right? But that is because we associate or identify ourselves with our physical form. So if if we started fasting, just in general, fasting from the things that we're normally inundating ourselves with, we would see tremendous results. But I feel that the food, and I don't know if I can't remember because that was the first book, but uh, I remember certainly at least feeling and stating, whether I stated it in Supercharged or not, but I always thought food was the foundation of the so-called matrix. That everything that's kind of like the basement, and everything is built on top of this foundation of food, identification with physical form. And once we actually develop the detachment and the will to fast, whether it's juice fasting or fasting from everything but maybe water, and then there's even dry fasting, which is a whole other level, which people have to be careful with that. Um, everything the false self, and I always say healing is the deconstruction of the false self. That kind of like, what's that game, Jenga? You
Yeah.
pull yeah. So with fasting, it's kind of like the deconstruction of the false self has begun. And I've always found that might be the single most important thing that we can do. Not everyone can fast though. If we are severely underweight, maybe from illness or or from something, not everyone can fast, but they can fast in other ways. They can fast in other ways, but it's so effective that people actually can't really believe how effective fasting really is. And fasting to me also is like, it's kind of what meditation is, right? You're fasting from phenomena, you're fasting from thoughts, you're fasting from identifications with bodily sensations. You're fasting. And really, when you start to do that, you begin to feast on the self. And when you feast on the self, that will really reverse, repair, rejuvenate, and regenerate anything that's out of whack with the so-called physical body and even the subtle bodies of energy. Fasting is the key.
Here's a question, because coming from the situation I was in, it was like that fast. There's this like holy grail in the I say chronic illness world where you're trying to get something called mucoid plaque out of your colon. And it's kind of like a rubbery tar-like substance that lines the colon. And often people who are chronically ill, especially things like Lyme, there's pathogens that hide behind the substance. So when you remove it from your body, suddenly the body can start doing what it's supposed to do. And I noticed after that started coming out that my mind opened up
Mm,
to I guess, my calling in a way.
mm.
My message, it's when I finished my book, and it's when I started to have dreams of like, maybe I'll do a podcast one day. But what I also noticed in myself and other people, that certain illnesses that are somewhat neurological, like in my case, it was a vaccine injury and it sort of broke the limbic system. So my autonomic nervous system doesn't really hadn't been working as well, and that requires more of what you talk about. It requires almost brain. There are programs called brain rewiring. There's Joe Dispenza. There's your program. I'm wondering, why is sometimes food enough, and sometimes you have to go deeper into the kind of work that you did, especially on yourself?
Oh, well, that's a great question. Okay. Well, the first thing I would say is that it's always deeper than food. So, in other words, there's already a shift in self-awareness and perception in order to take different actions. So, the different actions that we might be taking, say it's fasting or carnivore or whatever, it doesn't really matter. We're taking a different action, but what led up to the action? So there is already a shift in consciousness. There's already a shift in perception. There's already a shift in level of self-awareness. And then there are actions being taken. So if we go to that beginning part, Michelle, that's really the key. So it's never really, we think it's, and there's efficacy in these things that we're talking about without question. But we always think it's about the fasting, which has great efficacy, or it's about switching to carnivore, or it's about switching to juice, or it's about something, right? Um, and that does, like I said, there is efficacy, sometimes great efficacy in those things, but it starts before that. And the key is the start before that. It's the shift in perception. It's the shift in understanding. It's the shift in self-awareness. That shift is what leads to a different action. And the real key is that inner shift in perception, that inner shift in self-awareness. The actions that we take, while they do have efficacy, they absolutely do, in a lot of ways, on deep, deep levels, they're just permission slips. That's all they really are. They're permission slips to allow ourself to go into self-repair and self-healing, just to return to our natural state of self-repair and self-healing. So we can use fasting or use juice or use carnivore or use whatever's popular in the moment. But for the most part, and when I explain this to people, there's kind of like first there's resistance, and then it's like, well, wait a minute, that makes sense because that's downstream from the inner shift, right? So the most profound shift is a shift in consciousness, a shift in self-awareness. And because of that shift, we make a shift or a change in actions. And then those actions have efficacy. Some have more efficacy than others. But without the inner shift, it doesn't really matter what we do. It doesn't really matter what we do. And I'll take it even further. We talk about permission slips. Really the frequency of certainty, of knowingness, of authenticity is the most powerful free. People talk about love and other. This is bullshit. That's a spiritual fiction, love, light, namaste. We're all going to 5D garbage, absolute garbage. It's certainty, it's complete alignment, it's authenticity. That's the power. If we are certain in what we are doing is going to affect our health in a very positive way, it will. If we're certain. If we doubt that whatever changes we're making in regards to our health or other things, not just health, if we doubt that what we're doing is going to elicit or engender transformation and change, we're right either way. If we doubt it, we'll get limited results. If we're certain, we will get powerful results. And this really speaks to the power of the self, or what people call the power of the mind. But we're really talking about the higher mind, not the lower consciousness of logic and linearity. It's certainty is really what does it. We don't heal through belief. Anyone who says we heal through belief, that is absolute proof that this is an unawakened mind. Beliefs, by definition, are disempowering. If we looked at and felt into what a belief by metaphysical definition is anything whose landing spot lies outside of the self, like I believe in a heaven out there. There is no out there. It doesn't exist, right? You do not heal. No one heals through belief. We heal through a very specific frequency of knowing or certainty. And that's the key. And that's why I say these things in a lot of ways are just permission slips. They really are. They do have efficacy. I'm not here stating that fasting doesn't have efficacy or juicing doesn't have, because it does. It does. But it's the certainty is the real power that elicits and can elicit total transformation and total healing, no matter what the current state or condition actually is.
You know, this is like a perfect kind of marker for a thought that I had when I was rereading your book last night, because when you were in that crisis moment where you were paralyzed, you said something like, this is what total victory looks like in terms of like when you started to go into your self-healing mode. And I thought, wow, I mean, when I got sick, and I was in crisis for such an extended period of time, my self-confidence just completely like vanished. And most people, I feel like that's like a common denominator. Like all of a sudden you're not invincible and you're not the person that can drink all night and you're not the person that can like work all day and then fly to another country and like still be up and running and just exist on espresso. Like you're not suddenly that person that you've known for 20, 30, 40 years. You're an unknown entity. And that is scary. And so I was like stunned, still am, because I'm still working on it. That kind of self-confidence, that certainty that you can go to another place and truly heal yourself. And I'm just wondering like where that comes from.
Okay, so I would say that confidence is really for personhood. So it's the character, the human character, the ego mind identity, personhood that is seeking, always seeking something, and often seeking confidence, right? Or peace, or healing, or wealth, or that seeking. Okay, so confidence is really for personhood. Knowingness and certainty is the domain of the self. And because we are the self, being ourself doesn't actually require any effort. It's like doing less than nothing,
Mhm.
which the conditioned mind can't grasp that because it's always in motion, because without motion, boredom sets in, and boredom is really the is really the runway for enlightenment. That's what I said. So when we tone everything down and we become very still, right, there's this certainty. There's a level of self-awareness or gnosis. And that's really what I'm talking about. And that's when body mind complex, the suit, is attuned to what we really are. And when we fully align oneself with who and what we really are, that is what self realization is. That is what enlightenment is. That's actually what it is. There's no personhood in the way. There's nowhere lower consciousness that needs to be transcended. There's no character that needs to be healed, right? So it's confidence is for the person. Knowingness is part of who and what we really are. And that's where that certainty comes from. And that's really the key to what I would say is all success. All success comes from our ability to align the body mind complex to who and what we really are and not run programs. Whatever that program is, some sort of belief, some sort of concept, some sort of role, some so called knowledge, whatever it is, right? Once we attune ourselves to who and what we really are, that's the magic. And then all we have to do is just continue to be out of the way. So, in other words, the ego mind identity doesn't keep getting in the way and trying to take the wheel of the incarnation. And so the certainty comes from being who and what we really are. And because we are the self, as I said, it doesn't require any effort, right? It's being yourself. It's like doing less than nothing. And that doing nothing is the death of the ego mind identity, of the character. And therein lies your healing. Because as the ego mind identity, as the character starts to crumble and fall apart, so does its story of ill health. The story of ill health goes with it. As the character is leaving, so is its story. And there's no way for what was to continue to remain as is, as the character is leaving. So this is how we can start to see how self-realization or enlightenment, which is the same thing, how it's not the same thing as healing. It's not, but they're intertwined. They're absolutely intertwined because only the truth heals. Only the truth heals, and only being yourself is the only real truth. That's the only real truth, and that's how healing actually starts. And that's why I say I think I said in the first book is that healing is the deconstruction of the false self. Because as the false self is falling apart, its story of ill health goes with it. And that's really how once that begins to happen, we can feel it. And that's where that knowingness comes from, the certainty. And now there's no doubt. There's no worry. There's also no looking for an outcome. And this is the single biggest thing indicator of when we are truly in touch with who and what we really are. Is because if when we're truly in touch with who and what we really are, you're already at peace. And if you're already at peace, then what difference does it make what the outcome is? So in this very strange way, right? The healing doesn't matter. And this is the ego mind identity is like, what the fuck are you talking
Yes,
about?
that could drive a person a person with a mind like that
Yeah, that's
completely over the edge, especially the more routinized, you know, your culture, the culture you came from was in terms of
yeah.
extreme pedigree, success,
Hmm.
linear type, and my mind is actually being blown because I'm having these flashes now of just the kind of culture that I grew up in and the kind of
Hmm.
schools that I went to. And I thought, oh my gosh, that's the antidote. Like what
Hmm.
you're saying is literally the antidote to the kinds of minds that have been programmed, quite frankly, like mine was.
Hmm. Yeah, literally, that's exactly right. What I said is the cure, the antidote, the
Yeah.
remedy. And I'm 99% sure that I did say this in Supercharged Self Healing. Uh, when the neurosurgeon came in, this was like 2 days after, whatever it was, 48 hours after surgery or 72 hours, I don't remember. But he comes in and essentially and the infectious disease doctor was there, and my partner at the time was there. And he comes in and he's like, I've been doing this kind of surgery. He's a fantastic surgeon. This was in La Jolla, California. This guy's a world-renowned neurosurgeon, literally, right? So he comes in and he says what he, exactly what he did. He points it out and he goes, and just so you know, I've been doing this surgery for 20 years or 25 years. He said, there's just absolutely no way you can recover. The damage to your spine is it's too severe. I mean, I was paralyzed before they operated. So he's like, there's no chance of walking, just so you know. But hopefully through the surgery, we got all the infection off your spine. And you're gonna be, healthy after this. Hopefully the sepsis and the infection, all that is removed. But you're gonna be paralyzed from the chest down. That's just the way it is. That's just science. That's just it. And he walks out, right? So now, what matters is not his opinion. I could give a shit what his opinion is. But what I then said, I think, is the whole key to what we're talking about. Because what I then said is, and obviously the infectious disease doctor was actually quite upset to hear that I'll always be paralyzed. My partner at the time was completely devastated about hearing that. And I turned to both of them and I said, just so you know, I am 100% absolutely going to walk again. I guarantee it. And even if I don't, I'm at peace with everything. Now, it's those two things, Michelle. This is the key. This is the magic. It's those two things. Now, the ego mind identity cannot embody two seemingly contradictory ideas simultaneously because the ego mind identity is rooted in duality. So it's either this or it's that. It's either white or it's black. It's good or it's bad. It's positive or it's negative. This is not how things are. That is not how things are. Now, the self is everything. It could hold a million different truths simultaneously. So the idea of being at peace now while simultaneously harnessing the will in totality to put myself back together. Those two things at the same time. Only the self can do that. Now, the self can do anything. The ego mind identity can't do this. It can't. And this is where, with all the thousands and thousands of people that I've worked with and met with, one on one, in person, and all sorts of stuff, the ego mind identity cannot do what I just said. It can't do it. Now, we are not the ego mind identity, though. We are not. We are fully capable of being at peace right now because the self is always at peace while still harnessing our power of creation to bring about the a change in the screen of our consciousness, which includes our body. And it's being able to be at peace while working towards something, but coming from a foundation of peace, not fear, not desperation. That is a faulty foundation. And this is one of the main reasons why people don't heal, because they're coming from a place of fear, doubt, worry, terror, right? That's like building a house with a completely and utterly fucked up foundation. And then you're trying to put on a really nice second floor and a third floor, and you got a nice furniture and this, that. I don't care how nice you make it, that house is going to come down. And so we have to start, Michelle, the key is to start from being at peace, and only the self can do that. And when you start from there, when you start from peace, wholeness, completeness, you can literally put a completely and utterly destroyed body back together, even in 100 days.
You know, I, I know that, and I pray that in time we will look at your story and say, yes, that was miraculous for the time.
Yeah.
Right? That was absolutely unheard of for that period of where those people were in their consciousness. But in 100 years, and hopefully it's last 150 years or maybe 50 years, my prayer, and it's one of the things that I was so ignited by when I read your book. I mean, ignited in a such a like it brought me peace to
Mhm.
think that at some point in our history, in our evolution, of course, in the moment, I didn't think, oh, I'll do that for myself. I just thought this is like a wonderful like flag for the future
Mm.
that we'll get to the point in our evolution where everybody will naturally do this and it won't be this like outlier miracle. Do you think that we're going to get to that point in our evolution, or we're coming to that point in our evolution where we won't obtain the belief systems, we won't mirror the belief systems of, let's say, our doctors or our practitioners who maybe they're well-meaning, but they have belief systems, as you said, that are constricted. And so when we get sick, somebody says to us, "You're never going to get off those meds," or "You're never going to walk again," and we go, I'm never going to get off those meds. I'm definitely never going to. He knows more than I do. I mean, he went to so many years of school. So it's kind of like you said, we're sort of having to have confidence. And well, the self needs to be sure that its own miraculous healing powers are what's in force.
Yeah, I do feel, I mean, I've said this, that I feel the work that I'm doing as RJ. Um, I'm planting trees and I have no intention of enjoying the shade myself. So I would say absolutely. I feel that within 300 years, all these different books that I'm writing on manifestation, how to become enlightened, how to heal yourself, how to manifest, common, totally common. More, people pick up the work or whatever, 300 years, like, oh yeah, duh, of course. It's so obvious. Yeah, of course it is, right? For now, it's like, oh my God, this is incredible. No, not really. It's just clear. It's very clear, right? There's nothing in the way, right? I lost my mind a long time ago, and I'm not looking for it. So I do feel that in just a couple of hundred years, we're going to be working with ourselves in a way that is more akin to exactly what it is that we're talking about. Um, we have to be authentic. Absolutely. The authenticity, the honesty, the certainty is really the key. And in order to do that, we can't be operating through the ego mind identity. So it's always gonna come down to authenticity or inauthenticity, because only the power is only in authenticity. And so when we're authentic, when we're who and what we really are, there's nothing the self can't do. It's a fractal of God. And last I checked, God's not lacking anything. Neither are we. Now, the mind, the conditioned mind, is always in a state of lack, but we're the awareness of that mind. We're not that mind, we're the awareness of that mind. And when we stop identifying with the machinations of that mind, we'll start to reside within and as the self. And that's where the peace will come. And we'll start to realize that this self that we're just talking about now is whole and complete. What that means is that the healing is already in there. Just like your self-realization is already within you. I mean, where the hell is it? Cleveland, right? It's here now. It's within you now. The manifestation of your every desire is within you now. Everything is within you right now. The problem arises. We create a problem because the conditioned mind makes the goal or the achievement conditional, which means all these things have to line up. I have to get the right treatment, and I have to have the right doctor, and I have to have the right medications, and I have to have the right support group, and I have to have not true. It's the conditioned mind that takes the desire and the manifestation, which is one thing, separates it, and makes it conditional. And that's where the problems arise. Same with money. We're talking about health and wealth, they're almost the exact same thing. Health and wealth are spiritual outcomes. They're absolutely spiritual outcomes, without question. So when the conditioned mind doesn't make the result conditional, this is when we'll start doing unparalyzing ourselves and doing whatever. It'll be commonplace, like you were just talking about. But if the conditioned mind is present, it'll never be commonplace, because the conditioned mind makes results conditional, which means the state of being and the manifestation is is reliant upon something outside of itself. Got to be the right economy, got to have the right doctor, got to have enough money, got to have, these are just lies. We're making our state of being conditional, and that's what the conditioned mind does. And authentic self-realization or enlightenment, the conditioned mind literally is, it's just gone. There's no other way to say it. It's completely evaporated. It's just not there anymore. And so you actually start to tangibly realize all the stuff that I ramble on and on about. So it's the removal, like I said, the character. Healing is the deconstruction of the false self. When the character is gone, so is its story of ill health. And now it just becomes a matter of us bringing about this transformation. We're completely capable of it. But when the conditioned mind is there, it's really essentially it's impossible, because it'll keep pointing to exteriors as to why. Well, no, not quite yet. It's not, I don't quite have the right treatment. I haven't quite had enough time. I haven't talked to enough therapists. I haven't gotten the right antibiotic. I haven't, right? All of those things. But we will do these things, and we will do much more than what it is that I'm talking about. But make no mistake about it, these are absolutely the user manuals that humanity is going to use for the next several hundred years, without question. That's why I keep writing a book every year, because these are the user manuals that humanity is going to use to free itself from the limitations of the conditioned mind.
So I'm curious as to what you think. One of the things that happened to me when I woke up, when I had my first really epic spiritual awakening moment, which was when I went to the jungle and worked with ayahuasca,
Mm,
I came out of there with a number of different thoughts that honestly in the beginning were really troubling. One was I feel like I've been lied to my whole life about everything.
mm,
I had been seeing doctors for so many years, and I discovered that just about everything they did and said to me was harmful, not helpful. And it really cracked me open in a way that it's taken me many years to sort of stitch back together with books like yours and other kinds of self education now.
mm.
And I'm just wondering, why do we live like this? I'm not the only
Oh,
one. Right? I'm
no,
not the
no,
only one that's been stunned by my lack of education as to the truth prior to this
yeah.
experience.
This is, I'll try not to give a long answer, which is really hard for me. Okay, so
I know it's a big one.
the so Michelle, the we have to talk about the fact that when we incarnate into the lower which is where we are, into the lower frequencies of the physical, what we call the third dimension. It's not, it's the third frequency, but anyway, when we incarnate into the lower frequencies of the physical universe, we are so far from where we normally reside, and it's the actual incarnation or reincarnation process. By descending dimensionally and frequentially, essentially we're losing consciousness. And that's why when we get here, who am I? How did I get here? What is the point? Like, right? Deaf, dumb, and blind on an epic level. Okay.
Right.
Which means we are primed for total brainwashing, because we don't remember anything. We don't know anything. Right? So that's the answer. Now, the reason why we are fed lies and everything we have ever been told, as you just, and I mean everything,
Everything.
from A to Z, the whole fucking thing. Right?
Everything in between.
Yes, literally, literally. Okay. Now, why does that occur? Okay, number one, it can really only occur all the way down here, so to speak, if that makes sense, because there's such loss of consciousness. That's why I said we get here, we don't know how we got here, who are we, what is any of this about, right? Okay, primed for complete, utter brainwashing, societal conditioning, and MK Ultra, right? Just primed for it because we're clueless. Okay, now that can really only happen when you're totally clueless. And that's the state of consciousness when we descend frequentially and dimensionally and incarnate within the lower frequencies of the physical universe. The point behind that is to transcend it. Because the growth comes from the challenge. There is no growth if it's easy. And this is the part, the human mind, the human character, the ego mind identity, which is always seeking comfort and security, which is the real problem, that is the real problem. We need to be seeking discipline and adventure, not comfort and security. So the growth comes from the challenge of being lied to from A to Z and to transcend it, to go within, to start to realize the self and transcend everything that has been pushed upon us in every single way. The growth comes from the challenge. The growth doesn't come from anything other than challenge. And the analogy I always use, it's a ridiculous analogy, but it lands. So when we do the diving, like in the Olympics, they go up there. Now, no one does that I've seen. No one gets up there and does a swan dive, right? Why? Because it's too easy, right? Even if you do, I can do a swan dive. So even if you do a swan dive fabulously, you're not going to get a 10. It's too easy, right? You get a 7.5, maybe an 8, maybe, right? But if you go up there on the high dive and you do a triple backwards somersault flip, right? And you do a good job with that one, that's a 9, 9.5. Why? Degree of difficulty. So risk reward. So the evolution of consciousness, which is the point of all existence, to know thyself and all thy infinite potential. So the idea is to start to understand more of ourselves. And the only way to do that is to be challenged. Because if we weren't challenged, we would never draw more upon ourselves. If I wasn't paralyzed until they had 48 hours to live, I never would have gone so far within myself and summoned more of me because I had to. Because I absolutely had to. I had no choice. It was either that or end of this incarnation, we start again, right? So it's all screwed up here because it's designed that way so we can get the most out of this experience. That is the real reason. And it's only ever this quote unquote difficult in the lowest frequencies of the physical universe, which is exactly where we are now, because that is the furthest away that we could possibly be from our normal location, our normal state of consciousness, our normal state of connectivity and communion, our normal state of self-awareness, right? It's the total opposite. We have no idea how we got here, who we are, what anything is about, right? So talk about a challenge. So that's the real reason. It forces evolution, and that's actually the point.
What do you say to people? I've heard people say like, I live a life of Riley. Like, I don't know what everybody else is talking about. I have people in my life who will say that, and I'll think, wow, I must have really gotten off on the wrong bus, when I when I came down here, because my situation has been really different than something like that. And I imagine there's a spectrum of
Mhm.
human experiences and the things we're met with when we come down here. Think about people in war-torn countries, the Middle East, countries in Africa, just the kinds of terror that,
Mhm.
quite frankly, humans inflict on other humans. And I just wonder sometimes, like, why all the suffering? And I know that you say it so that we can have this expansive experience, but it just seems like I think that's where the terror comes from. That's where people get locked into that fight or flight situation where they can't really move on and they can't really get well. And because there seems to be so much chaos and so much suffering. And is that going to be me? And will that be me forever? So, what would you say to people? And I know a lot of people in my audience are struggling with some kind of condition or some kind of long-term mental or physical health situation. And I think what goes on in the world just really amplifies that frequency of terror.
Yeah. I mean, this will be incredibly triggering. So of course I'm going to say it.
We love
Um,
triggering.
yeah. But the real truth of the matter is, and I've talked a lot about this, that when we have a physical incarnation, which means an incarnation into the lower frequencies, the first full dimension is all physical universe. After the first full dimension, there's no such thing as physicality. Okay. So that being said, when we incarnate into the physical universe, pain, because there's the experience of solidity, right? So pain is inevitable, but suffering is optional. Now, suffering comes from identification. Now, we have to let this land what I just said. Okay, suffering is optional and it always comes from identification. You can only suffer what you identify with. Because the truth of the matter is, we're the awareness of everything that's going on here. The awareness. And what we are, the self, the soul, the I am, whatever word you want to use, is completely untouched by this whole experience. The body mind is definitely, I was paralyzed. The body mind is definitely affected by what goes on here because the body mind is part of and attuned to the local environment. You're not. You're beyond that. Much, much beyond that. So the I am, what you really are, does not suffer at all. It is the awareness of everything that is going on here. How can one be the awareness and the victim at the same time? This is a lie, right? This is caused by delusion and the delusion of identification, right? Now, I know this firsthand because I have been through what many people hopefully don't ever have to go through. I know levels of pain that I didn't think existed. And I don't mean flashes of it either. I mean like being stabbed in the spine repeatedly without break. It doesn't end. The level of agony was, I had to do everything not to just continually vomit. That's the level of pain. And I had to heal myself in this state. I had to develop the detachment. I had to be able to develop all these different techniques that I've now shared with humanity, right? Suffering's optional. If you're the awareness, kind of like a time-lapse camera, because we are immortal. The I am, the self, is immortal. We slid into this suit and we're going to slide out. Everyone is, right? Okay. So think of a time-lapse camera, Michelle. Does a time-lapse camera, as it watches the seasons change, right? Rain, sleet, snow, flowers bloom, die, etc., right? As the time-lapse camera witnesses all this, does the time-lapse camera suffer what it's watching? Or does it just watch? Completely detached? Does it just sees change? This is what we are. We are the time-lapse camera. We don't suffer anything. The character suffers because the character identifies with the body and therefore the things that the body experiences, like thoughts, emotions, sensations, right? Because we identify with the body, we experience and create suffering. But when you no longer identify with the body and you know the truth, you do not suffer. And as I said, I went through agony, absolute agony, and I never suffered a second of it. Never. Don't think I didn't feel pain. That is not the case. I absolutely did. But I did not identify with what was going on, which is why I was able to transcend it. So when we talk about suffering, suffering is an illusion. It's something the character does. You're not the character. You're aware of your character, which is why you can tell me everything about Michelle. You know why? Because you're not Michelle. That's why you can tell me all about her. Now, I understand this level of detachment is not taught on this planet. Well, it is now, but this detachment is not taught, right? It's not fostered, it's not engendered. It's right. We're actually brainwashed into the exact opposite of this. But that is all those things are illusions. They're lies, just as you were talking about. We've been lied to about everything. Well, now we're starting to get the truth. We are the awareness of everything that's going on here. And when you gain that level of detachment, your energy returns to you and you start to realize that you can do anything. Now, if you identify with what's going on, your energy is stuck to what it is that you're identifying with, you have no chance at transformation. None. And so this is the key. Detachment is power. There is no suffering. Suffering only occurs in the unawakened mind. And I've been there. I could have easily suffered and thrown in the towel and given up because that's all they ever told me to do. I don't know what you're doing, RJ. This is crazy. You can't walk. I don't know why you're doing this. Literally. I don't know why. You're setting yourself up for depression. You're setting yourself up to, we've seen people get suicidal because they think this is what they would say to me. Right. And then after about 2 or 3 weeks, they were singing a different tune, that's for sure. Right. But suffering is optional, Michelle. It comes from identification. And everything is happening for our evolution. Remember, what created this experience is not the human mind. We then can't view it from the human mind and try to understand it. That's part of the issue, right? Once we're incarnate, we're viewing, for the most part, we're viewing everything from our limited human mind. The human mind is not what created this incarnation. The human mind is not what created this experience, which is why the human mind doesn't understand it. That's the wrong tool. It's like trying to stitch a blanket with a knife. Good fucking luck. That's the wrong tool. It's not gonna work, right? So the truth of the matter is we don't suffer. We absolutely don't. The character does. And when we can get that level of detachment, I promise you, Michelle, this is when humanity will, remember when I said to be at peace now and harness the will? It comes from detachment. It comes from, to be at peace now, you can't be identified with anything. You can't. And that's where the peace comes from. And then once you're at peace, all your energy returns, and now you can do anything that you want to do. It doesn't matter what's going on with the body mind. It doesn't matter. My body didn't work. I couldn't feel it. Right? Instead of being dead, I was fully awake. I was just inside my body. Right? Normally that happens when you leave your body. Right? No. So I had this level of cosmic consciousness, but I was still inside my body. And that's why I relay all these things. This is actually how you do it. This is how you put your body back together. This is how you become self-realized or make millions of dollars. All these different things, right? So the suffering is optional, and suffering only comes from identification. And if we really let that land, just allowing the truth to land will start to give us some separation. We'll start to feel a little lighter. We really will. And then we just allow that, just marinate in that lightness. And the more you marinate in the lightness, the more you'll realize that whatever it is that you've made out to be so heavy isn't really there.
Wow. I mean, that's just mind-boggling on so many levels, and it's you're answering some really deep questions here, because I know along the way people will say to someone like, you can heal anything with your mind, but those are often people who don't really know what they're talking about, because they're thinking the mind of like actually the character of like, I will pound my fist and discipline myself into, but as I know with the juice fasting, it has to come from a place that's far beyond discipline, because discipline and willpower alone aren't proper tools. They just aren't enough.
Mm-hmm. It
Um,
beca- that's exact. It becomes a spiritual practice. It becomes unification with the self. That's exactly right. And that is really the gateway to doing the unlimited. The human character is very limited. Very. I mean, look around, right? The human character is very limited. The I am doesn't have any. Doesn't have any. And that's why attuning body mind to that, that's the birth of the superhuman. That's how you put a destroyed body back together. That's how you part the Red Sea. That's how you walk on water. This is exactly how you do it. This is exactly how you do it. Just what we're talking about. And you're completely right. You don't do it through your human mind and pound your fist. Good luck. That ain't gonna do it, right? But the I am literally can do anything because it is everything.
Now, clearly, all of this enlightenment, all of this understanding, this deep understanding and wisdom didn't happen just when you got sick. It had to have built up over, it had to have been somewhere tangible before. Were you trained? Were you always this way when you were, I remember you saying in the book, like you were this way when you were sort of this way when you were little, but then, it wasn't really, didn't land very well. So you kind of put it away for a number of years. Like, can you fill me in on how that worked so that you were able to get to this point when you were in absolute crisis, that it all kind of coalesced?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, my earliest memories as RJ were of me leaving my body as a kid. So I used to be on the ceiling, and then that graduated to being on the roof. And then I started to realize I could literally go anywhere in outer space, which is what I called it as a kid. But that's so I came into this world very, very detached. And without me going on and on and on, I play a very specific role when I incarnate here. I mean, I'm not going to sit here and say I'm like everybody else. I'm not. I'm not. I am a true teacher of humanity, a timeless teacher of humanity. And I always suspected as much as when I was a kid. Okay. One of the things I also used to say when I was a kid, that if I ever get sick, I'll just heal myself. I mean, that's fucking bizarre to say that without question, right? And if someone would have asked me, all right, RJ, how would you do it? I wouldn't have been able to give a specific answer, but I knew that I knew. It was only until the time was needed that all the specificities, the actual specifics of healing came back to me, because that was at the crisis moment. It's like it had to come back to me because this was the time. So, I mean, we could also put it this way. Prior to uh, complete paralysis and waking up in a state of cosmic consciousness, I was about as close to enlightenment as you can possibly be. I mean, that's just the truth. I was giving past life readings when I was in my 20s. There's so many different talents and abilities, moving energy and all this kind of stuff. I've always been a weirdo. Like I said, I came into this incarnation like that, saying if I ever get sick, I'll just heal myself, all sorts, bizarre things like that, seeing my other incarnations and so on and so forth. So my ego mind identity was very, very content with being about as close to enlightenment as you can get without being enlightened. That was good enough. But clearly, my true self had a much bigger plan. So there were many, many, many instances. And my third book, by the way, Access Superconsciousness, the first chapter is very autobiographical. I'm not sure if you've read that. So I talk about
Yeah.
maybe like five or six different, I think it was five or six different experiences that I had, and there'll be an autobiography eventually, but five or six different experiences that were quite profound and monumental in terms of my own self-realization and my own awakening. But I needed my body to be destroyed to fully awaken, right? I needed the ego mind identity whose foundational identification is with the body. If my body was destroyed, which it was, that's the destruction of the ego mind identity. So it was gone, just gone. And what remains is the I am. So to answer your question, I am different, and I came into this world like that, and this is the roles that I play when I come here. Um, that doesn't really mean anything, though, right? It's what you do with it once you get here. That's what matters. It's how well you work with yourself while you're here. Not so much your life plan. Who gives a shit what your life plan is if you get here and you just fumble the ball, right? If you just, you just fail to live up to your own expectations, but you can also exceed your own expectations. So all that matters is how you work with yourself when you get here. And I wanted a challenge, or I wouldn't bother. Really, I wouldn't bother coming here. So I gave myself the biggest challenge that I could think of. I mean, my last name is Spina, which means spine. I mean, you know, so I wanted a big, big challenge, Michelle, so I could prove to myself yet again that I know how to put a destroyed body back together. And then through me doing this and being embodied here, I would act as a permission slip for other people to do the impossible for themselves. And so it was really those two things. I wanted to become self-realized again, and I wanted to help humanity. I mean, what else is there, right? So uh, this is how I went about doing it. And it's pretty extreme, but this is how I went about doing it. So we're all different. I'm just different in this way. But the inner mechanics of everything that we're talking about is universal. Is universal. Healing for RJ works the same as it does for Michelle, as it does for your neighbor, and my dentist, and the inner mechanics are the same, right? It's the same. It's the same thing. And so we all can do this. Many of us have. I just remembered how to do it again. And many people are waking up to remembering about how to work with themselves. They're remembering who and what they really are. They're starting to transcend the brainwashing, just like you were talking about. But I just wanted a challenge. And through challenge, like I said, is the evolution of consciousness. And I knew if I did it myself, if I put myself through hell and transcended it, no one would be able to say, well, that's an interesting theory. It's not fucking theory. I don't deal in theory. I don't deal in beliefs. I deal in what
Right.
is. I deal in what is. So it becomes irrefutable. And then that's the permission slip for everyone else. It's like, oh, this weirdo RJ did it. And he's not full of it. He actually really did it. He even filmed it. He really did it. So this is actually how you really do it. And you know what? I'm gonna do it. And that's really the point.
It's kind of like when we see somebody at the Olympics who's gone like 30 seconds past the world record
Yeah.
or like a minute past the world record. And then the people who come up behind them are like, wait a minute. We were told that there was like absolutely no way anybody was ever going to go past that. And then suddenly you have years and years of
Mm-hmm.
people like going beyond and breaking those records. So I guess the permission slip in a way, and that's how I felt when I read your book. The permission slip in a way is like, it's our hope. It's really
Mm.
where you can move the finish line. You can
Yeah.
just keep on moving it if you see people who are now doing things that were beyond your original belief systems, because the belief system can sometimes feel like a concrete wall that you can't get past. But if somebody takes one of those pieces of concrete and moves it, you're like, oh, wait a second, there's like an opening.
That's exactly that's 100%. And it is. It's just a permission slip. That's all it is. So now other people can do the impossible for themselves. It's like, well, that guy was paralyzed from the chest down and told he had 48 hours to live. He did it. And he explained how he did it. Now I can do it. Yes, you can, because the inner mechanics are the same. They're universal. They're universal. So yeah, once it's downloaded into the collective consciousness, so in other words, once it's embodied and it's here, it becomes available to everybody else. And that's, like I said, that's really the point. So someone does the impossible, like running the 4 minute mile, right? Impossible, 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 right? And then finally he does it. And then a month later, someone did it. So it's like, and it was impossible forever. So, well, there's no such thing as impossible, right? So yeah, it's really about being an embodiment and then therefore being a permission slip for others. And that's what this is really about. And that's really what ascending the frequencies is. That's really what evolution is. It's really just that. It's moving past belief systems, concepts, ideologies. It's moving past these things. And the only true knowledge is knowledge of self or gnosis. The rest is the rest is literally bullshit. I mean, that's what it is. It's a way to keep us small, closed off, limited, separated, disconnected, right? But when we start working with ourselves properly, the way that we're talking about, all bets are off. We can literally do anything, and that's what excites me. That's what interests me is us being able to do anything, which is the truth.
Yes, that excites me to no end. And once again, my mind was completely blown when I began having these spiritually transformative experiences, especially an experience I had with Iboga,
Mm,
which was, deeply spiritual and also at the same time very confusing and took me a long time to integrate. And I was able to look at myself in the world in a different way. And, we hear
mm,
all of this all of the time about the Great Awakening and ascension and all of these things. And we really grasp onto it, I think, in the spiritual community. And yet it seems like there's a disconnect because there is so much pain and we're seeing truths now that are horrifying. You see pedophilia and you see the light being, spotlighted on terrible, like people who've done terrible things in the shadows for such a long time, and it's coming up and it's coming up and it's coming up. And I just feel like the consciousness is sort of almost like awakening and constricting at the same time. It's like there's just
mm.
some wacky disconnect going on. And I'm wondering if you can shed some light for the audience on that, because I bet you that more than one person is confused.
Yeah, well, we can't move past what we don't understand. Okay, so all of these horrifying things coming to light are necessary in order to move past it. Otherwise, it would just continue. So that's kind of like this, like you were saying, moving past, and at the same time, it's like, are we actually moving past? Yes, because we can't move past what we don't understand, right? So unfortunately, and that's not a strong enough word, but unfortunately, these things actually have been going on a long time, a, a very long time. All of us have been clueless. All of us have been asleep at the wheel for a very long time, but that is starting to change. We are going to hear more horror stories, right? But again, we can't move past what we don't understand. It's all part of the process, right? It's like we almost can't get healthy until we get the diagnosis of what it is that we need to heal. So it's like,
Mm.
right, we got to hear it's like, oh, Michelle, you got this, bad blood work, or RJ, right? So it's like, oh, well, I guess we needed to hear that in order to. So it kind of works in that way, which I know sounds strange, but that is how things actually work. So I what I don't want people to fall for, oh, that's a whole nother conversation. Okay, well, maybe I won't go there. But this idea though, because I've called out the spiritual community. Uh, I did an interview. You probably, or maybe you saw it, did not see it, maybe about a year ago, and I just completely, I said, I had enough of this. So,
I think so, yes.
yeah. So, but the point is that we are not, no one is going to do this for us. The Galactic Federation isn't going to save us, and the aliens aren't going to come here, and
Right,
we're not going to magically move into 5D.
right,
That is a psychological operation to keep people passive and
right,
weak and
right,
disempowered. That's what that is. Now, politics work a lot in the same way, right? The freedom movement is just complete and utter horseshit. They're still working for the same team. It's another way to keep you waiting, and someone's going to do it for you. It's the same playbook over and over and over again. Now, the multiverse is a multi-frequential, multi-dimensional hall of mirrors designed for self-mastery. And self-mastery is not a moving target that lies outside the self. So in other words, everyone has to do it individually. Everyone has to do it individually. You can't save anyone. Period. It doesn't work that way. You can't ascend everyone. It does, if that was possible, I would have done it for everyone a long time ago. It doesn't work that way. We have to do this ourselves. All of us individually. And the spiritual community has done such a massive disservice to the population because really essentially what we've done is we've gone from watching television all the time to watching YouTube all the time,
right,
right? And all we've really done is taken the belief systems that we had that were on television and just replaced them with spiritual belief systems. They're still bullshit. They're still belief systems. They're still agendas. They're not what is. It is not what is. This whole thing has also been an operation, a psychological operation that's been in the making for a long time. Just like the other horrifying things that we're talking about, this is just another aspect of it to placate, selling freedom and rebellion. I mean, it's just lies. It's like, take more medications, right? Don't worry about it. Well, the Galactic Federation is going to save you. No, your behavior is your savior.
right,
And that's it. So it's about empowering ourselves, letting go of identifications. We empower ourselves by letting go of what we're attached to. I know that doesn't sound right to the ego mind, but it's absolutely true. The more that you identify yourself, attach yourself with anything, that is your energy, your life force that you're using to stay attached to a role, a belief, a concept, an ideology, so called knowledge. That is your energy. The more identifications and attachments and ideologies that you identify with, the weaker you are energetically, the weaker you are. And the more that you disengage and no longer identify with these things, the more that your energy returns to you. So actually, detachment is power. And that's what the purveyors of the matrix are most afraid of, is everyone realizing what I just said. Because as soon as we start to disengage and no longer identify with all these beliefs, all this bullshit and all this kind of stuff, all of our power comes right back to us. And no, they can't stop that. So the more that they can keep you internally fragmented, the weaker that you are and the easier you are to control and subjugate. And so it's the microcosm and the mini, it's as above, so below. The more that we work with ourselves in the way that we're talking about, the more that we'll realize the truth, that we are unstoppable, that we have all the power, that nothing can hold us back except ourselves. And they realized a long time ago, the only way you can stop an unlimited, immortal creator being is to have each and every unlimited and immortal creator being stop themselves. And that's the conditioning. That's the brainwashing. That's the doubt. So they sit back, hands off, and just watch everyone stop themselves. And as you stop yourself, you stop everybody else through your own judgment, telling them this, don't do that. That's wrong. Don't do. It's brilliant. It's absolutely brilliant. But upon awakening, none of it works.
Correct.
None of it works. And we're starting to see that. Just we must not get caught up in what we see. And I always use the analogy, just pretend it's a boring movie, right? Because we all know what it's like to watch a boring movie. We don't give a shit what happens. It's like, whatever. I don't really care. I'm not into it. I don't care, right? And that's what I'm saying. Stop caring. That's what I said. Stop caring, because caring is having a vested interest in a specific outcome, which is disempowering. Have compassion. That's totally different. But caring, stop fucking caring. And watch how much better you feel and watch what you'll be able to do with yourself. That's really the metaphysics are the key. I wish I could teach the planet the metaphysics, but I mean, that's why I keep coming back. So I could just keep teaching it over and over again. But that's really the key, is this detachment gives us power. That detachment will give us clarity. We'll know what's right. We'll feel into it. It's like, no, something's not right about that. Nope, doesn't feel right to me. Doesn't pass the smell test. Nope, not doing it. Right? But when you're identified and attached to everything, you have no clarity. You have no clarity and no power. And that's the state of being and the state of consciousness that they want us in. Not knowing what to do, not knowing what's coming next, always worried about the next thing, always backpedaling, right? Being a consumer and not a creator. And when you're detached, you can create. And then once you can create, you can make your life whatever it is you want it to be.
It's almost like the ultimate terror that a narcissist has, that their
Mm.
victim will just suddenly not care what their next move is. Like their victim will just detach and take back their power by just kind of being indifferent.
That is a perfect analogy, because world culture is sociopathic and narcissistic and not human. So
Correct.
that is absolutely right. And that's where that comes from. And that is the kryptonite to that way of operating, is to not care, detach, and now they have no ammunition because they don't have your energy. And it's like, well, now the fuck, what do we do? We don't have them on the, right? They got nothing. They got nothing because we are everything. We have everything. That's exactly right. That is how you disarm a narcissist. That's how you disarm a psychopath. And that is actually how we're going to move past so-called world culture and actually create the environment that we truly desire, that we know that we're capable of, but we have to detach first in order to be able to
Yes.
do that. Yeah.
Yes. Wow. This has been one of the most fascinating and helpful hours that I know I've had. And I know that my audience is going to feel the same way because yeah, it was just really a special interview. And I just want to thank you. I know you're a busy person. And when I reached out to you and I had reviewed the book, I thought, well, I'm just going to take a shot. I'm just going to take a shot. Why not? And so I really appreciate you doing that because you really hit on, I think, what it is, the turning point that we're all about to get into.
Mhm.
You've been there first and you're guiding the way. And I think it's something that we absolutely have to be mindful of, not in the bypassing way that I think that some of us have gotten confused by, but in the actual cutting off the fuel of what is taking us in the wrong direction, which is outside of ourselves, in the fear, in the vibration of fear, so that we can bring it back home like you did.
That's exactly right. And that's exactly right. And remember, don't try to save anybody. I know that sounds odd, right? It we do more by leading by example. And you can't wake someone up who doesn't want to be woken up. You can't do it. I can't do it either. You just can't, right? They have to be seeking. There has to be a desire, right? It has to be there. And then if someone comes to you and asks you, then you share. But the idea of like, I have to go around saving everybody, I have to go around healing everybody, this is bullshit. Do not do that. It doesn't work that way, right? Keep empowering yourself by working with yourself properly and optimally. And that's why I write all these books and teach all these courses. So we actually understand how to do it properly and optimally. And then those that want their liberation, those that want their healing, those that want their freedom, they'll get a whiff of you and then they'll come to you. And that's really what this is about, right? Always work on yourself. If we spent more time working on ourselves than we do on our job or on uh, our concerns about world culture, this, that, always put the attention on the self, because where your attention goes, your energy flows. And where your energy flows, it grows. So if our attention is upon the self, guess what grows? The I am. And that's what this is really about. So keep the focus on the self, become more and more detached. Clarity, discernment, power, the ability to act. One of the keys is to be able to act quickly. If we can't act quickly, it means we're attached. And that's one of the hallmarks of truly powerful people, is that they can act quickly. They can move like that because they're not attached. They're not identified. It's like, oh, let me think about that for 6 weeks. Oh, I don't really know. And let me sit with that. And let me talk to my therapist for 4 years about it, or this or that, right? So the ability to move quickly actually speaks to the fact that you're very detached and you have all of your energy. This is the way that we want to be. We want to realize the inner stillness, the coiled stillness, and the ability to act as soon as we feel that it is the moment to act. And when we are all operating like that, no one will be able to stop us. No one will be able to stop us. And I actually think that is exactly what's going to happen. But it's going to be interesting. So my desire is that we all start working with ourselves in this way. And many people are, and many people will not. And it always has to be that way, by the way. It's the last thing I'll say, and then I'll finally stop talking, is that there's always a balance. There's always a balance. Like in high school, there's a certain amount of freshmen, sophomore, juniors, and seniors, right? It's not all seniors. It's not all freshmen, right? It's the same thing on this planet. It's never going to be a planet of all awakened, evolved souls. This is a lie. And it's never going to be a total planet of all completely asleep and unawakened souls. There is always a balance. Some are going to move into a greater state of inner awareness and the outer reality reflect that, and some won't. And that's a choice, right? But there is always a balance and there's always an equilibrium. That's why I say stop trying to save anybody. Stop. Because I got news for you. That choice, every individual has already made that choice, whether they realize it or not. It's already come and gone. The choice has already been made. We're just now watching the after effects of the choices that we've already made.
So, really, the best that we can do is not necessarily be saving somebody, but hope that we're modeling behavior that will ignite a force in someone else that will then put them on their path of rebuilding or reconstructing or healing or whatever it is that they're going to do for to be their best self.
Yeah, lead by example.
Hmm.
That's it. That is always the best leader. That is always the best teacher. Those that lead by example, those that embody what it is that they talk about, right? That's the whole key. Yeah. Lead the life that other people would like, I want to be like Michelle. She's got it together. She's focused. She's happy. She feels purpose in her life. I want to be like Michelle. Right? And then they come to you because they see you that way, not because you didn't shut the fuck up and you're just annoying them about you don't understand about 5D. And it's like no one wants to hear it. Trust me. No
Right.
one wants to hear it. They don't, right? So always lead by example. Those are always the most powerful leaders. Those that embody, those that walk the walk. Talk the talk is cheap. That doesn't mean anything, really. Walking the walk says everything. In fact, when you walk the walk, you often don't have to say anything. People just
And
get a whiff of it. Yeah. And they'll just know.
and it's quite astounding for somebody to walk the walk who had been paralyzed in your
Mhm.
case. That's actually takes it sort of takes the analogy one whole step further.
Yeah, yeah. Like I said, I wanted to give myself a challenge. So, but we're gonna figure out, and hopefully, like I said, it seems impossible or it seems like a big deal. It's not. I'm telling you, it's not. If I can do it, so can everybody else. Someone just has to do it first, like we talked about, like 4 minute mile or whatever it is. It's like, someone just has to do it first. And it's like, okay, and now look how many people are going to start doing it. It's the same thing, right? There are trailblazers, right? Okay, so some of us play the role of the trailblazer. Well, great, because other people are going to do it too. They're right behind me, and they're starting to do it too. So it's like, that's really that's the point, right? Lead by example, be an embodiment of what it is that we talk about, and that's really what changes things. Because if pontificating and proselytizing actually would have made a difference, the world would have already been enlightened 1,000 years ago. That doesn't change anything, right? It's the emanation of authenticity. We talked about the power before. That's where it
Right.
comes from. It's
Right.
that, not this. This doesn't mean anything.
Right. Because this is more academic,
Yeah, yeah,
correct?
ego, mind, identity. It's more
Right.
intellect, right? That's
Right.
all that is. And the intellect is a petulant child next to the towering presence of wisdom.
Wow. Um, I want to thank you, RJ, for sharing your time and your wisdom and your mentorship and your hope. And that's
Mm,
why I started Broken and Healed because I believe that even as broken as the body is, as mine was as well for a long time, I always had a little pulse of light. I
mm,
say that was in me even when I didn't know what was going on because I had severe mercury poisoning. And I
mm,
didn't really have access to my full brain, but I always felt a little pulse of light in there. And I knew that there was something that was almost like a fetus there was
mm,
something that was whole and complete. It was very faint
mhm.
and it was very small. And so I started Broken and Healed because even if 99% of us broken, there's always that 1% that's healed. And we hope the 1% grows into the 99%. So I try to bring people on that really embody that notion.
Yeah, 100%. You got it. The self is whole and complete. It's a fractal of God. The outer personality, ego, mind, identity, they're all a mess, just different flavors. It's all ice cream. I like to say just different flavors, right? But the true self, it's all one self. It's all God. And by attuning body mind to that, the wholeness, as you were talking about, becomes tangibly known. And that's the key.
Thank you. I will definitely take this with me into the rest of my day and the rest of my life. And I hope that my audience and your audience, I know, will as well.
It was my pleasure. I'm really glad we got a chance to talk, Michelle. I got a feeling it won't be the last time.
I don't think it will be because we have so much more to talk about. It's
Yeah,
infinite, in fact.
yeah, for sure, for sure. But it's been a pleasure. It's been an absolute pleasure.
My pleasure as well. Take care, RJ.
Thank you. You too. You too.